Good evening. You're watching Profit 360. My name is Sanjana, and on to some breaking news that's coming in this evening with my colleague Rishabh Bhatnagar standing by. The Indian negotiating team headed by Special Secretary Rajesh Agrawal has returned from the US, say sources. Let me quickly go over to my colleague Rishabh for all of the details. Rishabh, we understand lots of details coming in from the Commerce Ministry sources, and of course, given that we understand that this negotiating team is back. Give us all the details.
Right, Sanjana, what we're picking up from this entire ordeal that's been going on for a while is that the Indian negotiating team is back from the US. This was led by Special Secretary Rajesh Agrawal. We also got Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, on record saying that trade deals are not made on the basis of deadlines. That is what we're picking up, and it's very much possible that a deal or an interim trade deal is not reached before July 9th. That is the tariff pause deadline, the 3-month tariff pause deadline that was imposed by the Trump administration. What Piyush Goyal also said is that the negotiations are underway, and FTA will only be signed, or a trade deal will only be signed once there's a win-win situation that is achieved by both sides. He also added that when a trade deal is fully ready, when it's fully cooked, it will be finalized. What we're also picking up from sources is the fact that the deal will only be made if India gets sustained preference. That is the term that was used. India will get sustained preference in key focus sectors, and those focus sectors are, of course, leather, footwear, toys, all of these very labor-intensive manufacturing sectors. So if India gets sustained preference in terms of competitiveness also vis-a-vis other manufacturing economies, only then is when a deal will be made imminent. What we're also picking up is that trade talks are still ongoing. Everything remains on the table. But what is clear is that deadlines will not be a factor for deal making. What we're also seeing is that this initial interim trade deal that we're seeing will only be focused on goods. So don't expect any large announcements on market access, on services, on visas, none of that. It will purely be based on goods if a deal is reached. What we're also seeing is that sectoral tariffs, the Section 232 tariffs that were imposed by the Trump administration on steel, aluminium, auto components, that will also remain untouched in this interim trade deal if it is made. That is what we have picked up from sources as well as the Minister Piyush Goyal himself. Back to you.
Right, Rishabh, thanks so much for that. But stay with us because I'm going to quickly play out Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's bite. We believe he was speaking to reporters earlier, and he laid it out very clearly that deadlines and timelines actually are of second importance, because what's most important is India's interest, number one, and also the FTA has to be a win-win on both sides. Let's play that reaction out.
फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट तभी संभव होता है जब दो तरफा फायदा हो. इट शुड बी अ विन विन एग्रीमेंट, और जब भारत के इंटरेस्ट को सुरक्षित रखते हुए नेशनल इंटरेस्ट विल ऑलवेज बी सुप्रीम, वो ध्यान में रखते हुए अच्छा अगर डील बनती है तो भारत तो विकसित देशों के साथ डील करने के लिए कभी भी तैयार है. भारत कभी कोई ट्रेड डील डेडलाइन या समय सीमा के आधार पर कभी नहीं करता है. जब डील अच्छी बन जाए, पूरी तरीके से पक जाए और देश हित में हो, तब उसको हम स्वीकार करते हैं.
Right, let me quickly go back to my colleague Rishabh Bhatnagar, who has been standing by. So Rishabh, just to clarify here, we had the minister clearly come out and say that the deal is being cooked, is being finalized, negotiations are still happening, and this will take time until and unless it's an FTA win-win on both sides. So is it safe for us to say that we cannot expect any announcement or nothing is imminent, at least for the next 48 hours, because we're also hearing reports coming in like that from the US as well?
Right, Sanjana, I think it's safe to say that over the next 48 hours, it's very, very tough that India and US will reach an interim trade deal. However, trade talks are still going on. That is despite the Minister Goyal himself saying that deadlines are not something that will be a factor in deal making. That is a very, very clear and clear statement and clear indication coming in from the Commerce Minister himself that India will not bow down to any sort of external pressure while making a deal. So while a Vietnam or while an Indonesia would have bowed down to the July 9 deadline, Indian negotiators have returned so far without a deal finalization announcement that has come in as of this report. So that is what we are picking up over the next 48 hours. Highly unlikely that a deal will be announced, but we're all still very much looking forward to any trade negotiations that are still ongoing between the two countries. That is despite the negotiating team led by Special Secretary Rajesh Agrawal returning from Washington to New Delhi.
Rishabh Bhatnagar, thanks so much for that update. But stay with us. Just a quick recap for our viewers. Official sources exclusively telling NDTV Profit that these Indian negotiators are back. Trade talks are ongoing. Everything is still on the table. And the focus is going to be labor-intensive sectors like leather, toys and footwears. And deadlines will not be a factor in deal making. Very, very crucial information coming in, broken exclusively by my colleague Rishabh. Rishabh, stay with us because we also understand that India has notified the WTO's Council for Trade in Goods of its proposed suspension of concessions and other obligations under certain WTO provisions, because we understand on March 26 this year, the US adopted a safeguard measure in the form of a tariff increase of 25% ad valorem on imports of passenger vehicles and light trucks on certain automobile parts from India. Rishabh, so take us through what it actually means when India is saying that it reserves its right to collect, these duties.
Right, Sanjana, what this essentially means is that given that India is a member of the World Trade Organization, this is sort of an intimation that India is very much a part of this multilateral platform, and it will and it does reserve the right to retaliate against any of these duties that have come India's way so far. Remember, on June 3rd, India sent out a similar notice at the WTO to the United States of America against the US's steel tariffs that have now reached 50%. But India has chosen not to impose any duties so far. But India has made it very, very clear that it reserves the right to retaliate. Similarly, what we've seen today is against the auto tariffs and the auto component tariffs that India has been facing so far. Again, this is not country specific that the US has imposed on India only. This is imposed throughout the world. This is done on a global level. But India making very good use of this multilateral platform that is WTO, and saying that we do reserve the right to hold, to impose any sort of retaliatory duties as we please. What it has also said is that India, if they choose to impose these retaliatory duties, India could end up collecting about $720 million in duties. That is what India has said at the WTO, because it will then be able to levy customs or duties on about $3 billion worth of imports that the US takes from India in terms of auto components. So India clearly making it very, very clear that it's not a unilateral decision that the US can take in terms of imposition of retaliatory tariffs, but India can also, and it does reserve the right to retaliate. It's yet to be seen whether India will actually act upon this notice and impose any sort of tariffs with regards to steel, aluminium, as well as auto and auto components.
Rishabh Bhatnagar bringing us some extremely crucial information at the top of the hour this evening. What we're understanding from sources is that an announcement over the trade deal is unlikely over the next 48 hours. Sources also adding that the negotiating team has in fact returned from the United States. This is, remember, after they extended their stay in Washington. We also heard from the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, the government clearly laying out that India's interests must come first and deadline and timelines are secondary. And most importantly, the FTA has to be a win-win. Let's bring you some news coming in from what's happening with regards to Donald Trump. He's going to be firing off letters to countries with tariff rates as they face to sell in the US market. Remember, all of this time, Trump hasn't budged even a bit. He has time and again emphasized that he'd rather send out tariff letters than negotiate forever. So with only Britain and Vietnam sealing the deal so far, this high-stakes business deal could reshape global trade. Let's now get you Trump's remark on tariff letters that will be issued to countries starting today. He said the tariffs will range from 60 to 70% or from 10 to 20%. Let's listen in.
So we're going to start sending letters out to various countries starting tomorrow. We'll probably have 10 or 12 go out tomorrow. And over the next few days, I think by the 9th, they'll be fully covered. And they'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs. But they're going to be starting to go out sometime tomorrow. We've done the final form, and it's basically going to explain what the countries are going to be paying in tariffs. And it's very important. It's a lot of money for the country, but we're giving them a bargain.